Hi, and welcome to BallinCraig map, which is another Irish map. This is the first video I've done of this map on FS22, and it may be the last video I do on this map. I'll show you why during my walk around tour. But I absolutely love this map. This map originally came out for FS17, and I spent hundreds and hundreds of hours on this map. Possibly even 1,000 hours. I've probably spent more time on this map than any other one single map in the whole of the Farming Simulator series. So I played it forever on FS17. Then when FS19 came out, they brought out a version of it called BallinCraig Extended. It wasn't done by the original modder, and it had lots of problems, the extended version. Like for example, this fence that we're looking at right now, as you walk down there, in fact I see this one's got the same problem and I hadn't even noticed it, or I could have fixed it. See, the fence just stops there with no post there, but I'll fix that fence off line later. I'll just remove that fence, put another one in there. Luckily with FS22 it's easy to do that because you've got the object hider mod, and then you just put in a new fence. With FS19 there were no mods like that, but I really wanted to play the extended version when FS19 came out, and Eustace Farmer fixed up the whole map for me, the FS19 version, so I had one without all those problems. And like another problem it would have fence panes missing. You'd have a fence going along, and in between two of the poles there'd be no fence when there was everywhere else. So he fixed all those sorts of things on the FS19 version for me. This is the FS22 version. This one, again, was not converted by the original modder, and there were lots and lots and lots of things that I think were ruined on this. And I've fixed all the ones I can, but I'll show you around. And so this is the house there, a fairly small house, especially when you look at it compared to like a Land Rover thing next to it, so it's probably a wee bit too scaled small, but I don't mind. Gravel driveway. This wasn't gravel, it was dirt, but in the original FS17 version, which is what I've modelled this modified FS22 version off, it was gravel, and I liked the gravel there. Now, coming around here, here is my calf barn. Now, this is the first problem that this map has, but I will show you in more detail when we get to one of the paddocks. It's easier to demonstrate there. But I put this in because there was a much smaller barn there. The FS17 version, sorry, this map was a very, very tight map, and whoever did it for FS22 opened the yard right up, and I didn't like that. I prefer a very tight map, so I closed it all back in again, and it's a very, very tight map, all closed down again. That's a sheep paddock in there. We can go in there and we can see the sheep and things, but don't really need to see sheep paddock. I put the fuel tank in there, I put all these sheds in, made the whole yard a lot tighter again. I'll just go and grab my trike and then we'll go for a ride around the farm, and I'll show you a few bits and pieces on the farm. Yeah, probably need a 3-point turn to get around here. Yep. Okay. So we're going to head down this way first. So as I said, a lot of these sheds I put in, and some of these sheds, so this one here I put in, this one here I didn't put that one in, that was already there, and this one here was already there. But one of the things about the FS17 version of this map is it didn't have a lot of shed space, so a lot of equipment ended up having to live outside, and I didn't want to get rid of those sheds because they actually worked well, I thought, but I didn't want them available as shed space. So instead what I did is I put these placeable cows in there and the gates on the front. So these are just areas I'll probably end up putting straw on the ground inside these 3 sheds. So I'm not sure why these cows are separated. Maybe they're having difficult births, maybe they're sick. You know, you can choose the reason for it, but I'm sure there's occasions when you need to separate some cows out from the rest of the herd. So that's what I've done there. And this is the area where I keep my bales. It's not very full yet, so I don't have very many bales. This map, or the FS17 version of this map, is probably one of the first maps ever to have a closed-in silo with a roof. See, this is actually meant to be a silo, and there is the silo door there. But I always keep the door open because I don't use this as a silo. And the thing with this one is also it can be loaded from the back. I know there's a few, so you can load it up there and then drive across onto the stuff to compress it. Now I know there's a few maps around nowadays that have a closed-in silo with a roof and that you can load from the back, but I think they all got the idea from this map. This was the very first map that ever did this. Now if we come up here, and I'll just zoom out for a second, you can see the first problem with this map. As you're ploughing the fields or anything, they come up with patches of colour like that. So when you actually go into here, and while we're here I'll just show you as well, this is, as you can see, I own the whole map. This is a very, very tiny map. So there's only one road. It starts in the top left hand corner here, goes across to about halfway down, then down there, and across to the bottom right hand corner. So that's the only road on the whole map. So there's a very, very small map, and pretty much the road is in a valley with hills coming up either side of it. So the edges of the map are the high points of the map. But sorry, I was going to show you what I was in here. So when I go in here, you can see it doesn't necessarily record, like this field here has had a layer of fertilisation on it, but that's not showing. These ones have had the whole fertilisation, but still showing kind of like striped like that, like some of it's at level 1, some of it's at level 2. And when I go there, it shows the correct thing though. So there you can see it's a seed bed, which is correct, and more seed beds. That one there should be a seed bed as well, but I suspect if I go out of the map and then back in, no. Okay, it was showing the seed bed before. Now, when this map was originally done for FS17, there was only 2 paddocks on the whole map that weren't grass, everything else was grass, and the description said that too. And the funny thing is, the person that converted it to FS22 left the same description there, but every single paddock except one was in crop. And I don't think it makes a better dairy farm than it does a crop farm. So this paddock on the right of me now, that's one of only 4 paddocks in the game that I'll be putting crops in on. So I've got 4 paddocks that I've got grass growing in, which will be for mowing, 4 paddocks for crops, 1 orchard, which we'll look at later, 1 vineyard to come, and everything else is a cow paddock. So this paddock here, this is going to be my vineyard. Now this paddock, I'll just try it here for a second. This paddock goes all the way down this hill, quite a long way down, as you can see, so it's actually quite a decent sized paddock. And I'm going to plant grapevines in this paddock, fill the whole paddock full of rows of grapevines going down the hill. I'm not going to be tending them, I don't have any grapevine equipment, but I want it to be an old, overgrown, disused vineyard. Now, go up here, and because I've got one of my paddocks of cows up here, and I'll show you another problem this map had. Oh, a second problem this map had is all the tracks. There wasn't even a track here, I put this one in myself, but all the tracks that were here, which were meant to be very narrow tracks and things, most of them have been done really, really wide, so I've had to put grass in, you know, further to narrow up the tracks and things. Now when I come into this paddock, and I'll demonstrate one of the big problems. So the 2 biggest problems with this map I've found, one is that thing with the crops aren't necessarily showing as they're meant to, and if that's, I don't know whether they're going to grow properly or not, because I haven't got them planted yet, but if they're not, then I may end up not doing this map. The other problem, I've found a way around that works and I'm happy with. So when you go up here, say we go into here, where are we? You can see that on this paddock here, I've got 10 Holstein cows, okay? And if we look at the food there, okay, I've got a water pump in there, so that's why the water is showing so high, but the food's actually going down. You can see it's being eaten. This paddock here is actually called back corner paddock, I think, from memory. Where is it? Back corner paddock. So that's this one here that we're in right now. You can see the water's excessively high because I've got a water pump in there, but the food is being eaten. The cows, they're 100% production, they're 10% through reproduction, and they're of good health. But this is one of the expandable pastures I put in here, because this one wasn't originally a cow paddock. and for some reason when you put the cows in, they're invisible. So the stats work for them and everything, so they eat food, they reproduce and everything else, but you just can't see them. So what I've done, I'll just zoom out so you can see, I've put placeable cows in there that aren't don't move. Now normally that would be enough to have me saying no, I'm not going to play this map's stupid. But when I was originally playing this map on FS17, I think that was the first version of Farming Simulator where they had any kind of fenceless pastures you could put in, and it was just a small square one. So when I played this on FS17, I had a small square in each paddock of animated cows, and then to make the paddock look full of cows, I put a whole lot of these placeable cows in there as well, just to fill up the paddock. So in actual fact, although normally I would be saying, look, if the animated cows don't show up, and I have to have all these placeable cows standing perfectly still in the fields instead, I'm not going to play the game. For this, for just this map, because I love this map so much, it kind of brings back memories of having those fields full of placeable cows. So I actually kind of like having that like that. So even though I know, for example, that a Fury Machine Gaming tried this map, as soon as he discovered a fault like that, he's like, right, that's it, that map goes, because he hates any maps that have faults, and I get that, so I'm not knocking that at all. But for this particular map, I actually really like having the placeable cows on there, since the other ones are invisible anyway. I mean, I wouldn't have had placeable ones if the other cows showed up as they meant to. So in each cow paddock, except for the ones that were already in the game, so all the cow paddocks I've placed, I've had to put the cows in, then put the same number of placeable cows in as what I've got in that paddock, so it looks right. Now you'll also notice, I should have shown you before I went through that gate actually, so let's go through this paddock for a second. So this is one of my grass fields. Again, this one, if we look at the ground, the grass is still growing at the moment, you can see that the textures underneath it change colour, because like that field next door that I've got all ploughed up, it was in different colours and things, and you can kind of see that when you're looking at the grass. But I'm hoping as that grass grows, that won't be so obvious. Now this is where I store silage bales. There just simply is not room in any shed for them, and as I said, one of the things I really loved about this farm on FS17 was a lack of shed space, so you had to make do with what you could. So I've got silage bales stored on the side of the field there. Now we'll go down here a bit further, so we've seen this part of the farm here. And one difference between this map and the FS17 version is the addition of this milking shed here. This milking shed was not on the FS17 version. The person that converted it to FS22 added this in, and I left it here because I actually really like it there, so I decided to leave it there. Now this is the only field I've got of animated cows, and that's because this is one of the ones that's meant to be in the game. The problem is there's no food trigger for this field, so I cannot feed these cows. So what I've done is I've made these cows heifers instead, so that they're not producing any milk, and I'm just going to let them starve, because obviously in FS22 they don't die if you don't feed them. But there's a trough there, and seems to be no emptying trigger at that trough. And if I go to, I'll show you, I went in here and I turned on the, sorry, not to there, into this one, and turned on the visible triggers, and the trigger is over here, but you can't empty food there either. That trigger just seems to be a floating trigger symbol without actually working. And as I said, the trough doesn't work as a trigger either. So I've driven all around this paddock and can't find anywhere to put food, so those heifers don't get fed. As I said, a lot of problems. While we're down this end, I'll also show you inside this gate here. I've added that lean-to in to put an old combine in. I did that in my FS17 version as well, had an old lean-to that I added on there. Now, this is one of those tracks I narrowed it right up, because it was quite wide and things, so I made this a lot narrower. And there's the milking shed again. Now this is the steepest hill on the whole farm, and trust me, if you're pulling up a food wagon full of TMR, It's very, very slow work heading up this hill, especially because this farm is so tight that my biggest tractor is 110 horsepower. That's the big tractor on my farm, is 110 horse. So you can imagine how hard it is getting up that hill with a 110 horsepower tractor. One of the things I love about this farm is it's so overgrown that you've often got to use the interior view, simply because otherwise the trees will get in the way and things. And so this is where my farm ends, on this side of the road, at this paddock here, and we'll go back down and I'll show you a wee bit on the other side of the road as well. But you've seen probably most of the stuff of interest on this farm. And as I said, if this was any other map except for BallinCraig, I would probably say no, there's too many problems with this map, too many faults, I'm getting rid of it. But because it's BallinCraig, which I've spent, as I said, probably 1,000 hours on, I actually really want to play it. So we'll see how it goes. If the crops are going to cause problems, I might stop playing it still, but we'll just see how it goes. And this gravel driveway here is probably the second steepest hill on the farm. And I added in the little roadside shop across the road there. Again, I added one of these in an FS17 as well, on my version of that. And this is my apple orchard. Now again, this is overgrown and, well, I'm waiting for the grass to finish growing, but this will be overgrown, very unkempt. I'm not actually going to be picking apples and things. I wanted that apple orchard there because I had it on FS17, but I don't really want to be doing the whole apple thing on this particular map, so I'm just going to treat that as an overgrown, unkempt apple orchard. And then, as you can see, I've also got paddocks of cows on the other side of the road, so it involves bringing the TMR wagons and things out onto the road and down the road here to get to those. I will show you one other area that I want to show you is up this track here. And again, this track here was way too wide and things, so I had to rebuild all of this. Almost this whole map I've either repainted or replanted, so basically none of the visual things you're seeing, apart from the buildings, although even the buildings on the actual main farmyard itself I've changed a lot of, but basically everything here I've changed and redone to get it to look how it looked on FS17. Now, there's a nice little old shed or something there. And if I go up to here, and I just want to go into this grass paddock here, so I'll open this gate to show you. I've also, so this one and the one next to it are both paddocks I'm going to be using for mowing and making bales. And what I've done is, because this is quite a long way from the main yard of the farm, I've put a little pole barn up in the corner here. Now there's two reasons for that. One is if I'm just making silage bales that are going to be eventually sold, they can go in here instead of transporting them all the way back to the yard. But it also means that if I'm racing against the weather, if I've got bales that I've got to get baled up, but I don't have time to wrap them or something, and it looks like it's going to be raining soon, the weather forecast says it's going to be, I can just shove them in here and come back and deal with them later on. So yeah, again, that's something else I had in FS17. I put a little pole barn in that corner, so I wanted to kind of keep, so basically the way I've rebuilt this map, and as I said, I've spent more time rebuilding on this map than I have on any other one, I think, ever. Basically every single thing on this map had to be rebuilt and redone to get it how I want it. I've tried to model it to look like the FS17 version of this map I spent so much time on. Now there could actually be a slight problem when it comes to selling silage bales too, because generally speaking, what I found with dairy farming on Farming Simulator, and this doesn't just go for this version of it, it goes for all the versions of it, is it's very, very hard to be profitable as a dairy farm if all you're trying to make money from is selling excess calves that you don't want and selling milk. And there's an old yard through there, that barn there that you can see there, another calf barn there. If I put animals in that one, they would be animated because that's one of the barns that was on the farm, but they'd actually sink to the ground, and you'd only see like from the belly up on the cows, and quite frankly I don't want cows in that shed anyway, so I just leave it empty as the old barn. Now, so as I was saying anyway before I interrupted myself, it's very, very hard on Farming Simulator to make money just from milk sales and selling of any excess calves. So what you really need to be doing is selling excess silage bales as well. It's the only way you're going to actually stay afloat in the game. And the thing is that in the original FS17 version and in the FS19 rebuilt version, this bale sale point was inside this shed here, and on this version that shed doesn't open. So I'm not actually certain, and I can go and do this again, but I don't know. See, so the animal sell point, buy and sell points in there. That's fine, that's where it was. But I'm not actually certain. Can I sell bales here? Or can I sell them here? So I'm not absolutely certain if there is a bale sell point on this map any longer. Because this looks more like a grain sell point. That's certainly what it always was. It was a grain sell point. But yeah, originally that one did grain, and I think it might have done, and that one over there might be for wool, I think. So I'm not 100% certain whether there is actually a bale sell point on this map any longer. So I said it should have been in there, and that shed no longer opens. But we'll find out when I have bales to sell. I don't have any to sell at the moment, and if there isn't, then I'll have to search and see if I can find a placeable bale sell point. I don't know if there's such a thing or not. I don't think actually. Well, that's gate just went through that fence. Something else I need to look at fixing. So every time I go onto this map I find something else that needs fixing that I haven't fixed. But I'm getting there. It's all pretty much now how I want it to be and how I want it to look. So one other interesting thing, and I know that I've got one or two people that subscribe to my channel who are Irish, so they'll already know this, but I didn't, and I googled it and I found it out, so I thought I'd share it. Because this map here is called BallinCraig. There's another Irish map that I've played probably very, very close to 1,000 hours. Maybe I have even played 1,000 hours on, I don't know. Called BallySpring. Also an Irish map. And I thought, well, this is, quite almost coincidental. There's two Irish maps, one called BallySpring and one called BallinCraig. So I did a bit of a Google search, and it turns out that Bally or Ballin it means the place of. So apparently in Ireland there's actually hundreds of places that start with either Bally or Ballin. So BallinCraig, so this farm would basically, or this map would be the place of Craig, and BallySpring would be the place of spring. I'm not sure whether that's spring in the season or spring as in a spring of water. I'm not sure, but I just thought it was interesting. That's why they've both got similar names, and in actual fact, as I said, there's hundreds of places in Ireland with names like that. So I found that quite an interesting, just a bit of a tidbit, I suppose. But I forgot to start the time on this video, and it feels like I've been going for about 20 minutes now. And although you haven't seen all of the farm by a long chalk, you've seen, all you've missed out on is seeing fields of cows, because I've shown you pretty much everything else. So I shall let you go now. Thank you very much. Bye.